In a world that had become a strange hell filled with monsters invulnerable to ordinary weapons, humanity's only hope lay with a select few who possessed superpowers. The strongest among them was our protagonist, Kang Han-soo. But even he was not almighty. When he was betrayed by his organization and trapped with dozens of monsters, he died. Fortunately, he regressed back in time to an era before the apocalypse. He was reborn in the body of a baby, retaining all his knowledge of monsters and his main power, which allowed him to absorb the abilities of monsters he killed. As he looked around more carefully, he realized the impossible. He was a baby again. While he was trying to figure out what was happening, a slippered foot walked into his room. Han-soo immediately went on alert, backing into the corner of his crib as the strange person loomed over him. His mind raced, trying to determine if this person was from the organization. But then the woman leaned down with a loving look on her face and greeted him, "Akan." It seemed this woman was his mother, and she had come to check on him after hearing him wake up. She returned to her cooking once she saw he was all right. Kang Han-soo, now in the body of a baby named Yu-han, took a moment to look around. Everything was peaceful and clean, a stark contrast to the ruined world he was used to. The TV was on, he could hear people moving outside, and there were no signs of monsters. This was clearly an era of peace. He had been reincarnated into a world where the catastrophe hadn't happened yet, and more importantly, the organization didn't exist here. For the first time in a long, long time, Yu-han would have a taste of freedom. Despite everything he had endured, it seemed fate hadn't abandoned him. This would be a day of new beginnings. He glanced at a nearby calendar and saw the year was 2020. This meant he had woken up 4 years before the great catastrophe. That wasn't good. In his current baby body, he was helpless. He couldn't even stand without support, his tiny limbs too weak to hold him. His throat felt strange and he couldn't speak. Time was of the essence, and he couldn't afford to just be a normal baby while the world was on the brink of apocalypse. Yu-han looked towards his mother, wondering if he could rely on her, or perhaps he could just use her like a puppet to achieve his goals. She had to be useful for something. His hopes dwindled as he watched her. She was clumsy proven when several boxes tumbled from a shelf she brushed past. She wasn't good with her hands piling an impossibly high mountain of flour into a bowl. She was also a terrible cook, nearly burning the house down while trying to make breakfast. It was obvious she was incompetent, but even with her hair singed from the fire, she tried her best to care for him. The future already looked rough. Just then the doorbell rang. His mother went to answer it, expecting a package. Before opening the door, she rushed off to find her wallet to pay for the delivery. As she left, Yu-han tried to remember the last time he'd heard the word package. He recalled a terrifying situation where infected delivery workers had spread the plague by meeting countless people. As the horrifying realization dawned on him, the front door slowly opened. A ghoulish voice urged from the other side, "Please take the package." When the door opened fully, it was just as Yu-han had predicted. The person on the other side was infected, transformed into a delivery monster. There was no time to be scared. Even in his baby body, he had to defend himself. The only things available were the baby bottle his mother had given him and a pillow. He grabbed the pillow and threw it to the floor. Suddenly, the monster launched an attack straight at his head. A powerful blast cut through the crib, but Yu-han, having grabbed his bottle, made a quick escape, landing safely on the pillow below. A direct hit from that blast would have meant certain death. Luckily, his past life had given him more than enough experience fighting monsters. He knew he couldn't beat this opponent, an amplified monster with dangerous-looking tentacles on its head. But he also knew that strong monsters like this were terrible at making tight turns. He tossed his baby bottle lightly under the monster's feet. As it rushed him, it tripped, flying over his head and crashing through the window. For the first time, Yu-han was grateful for the brutal battles of his past. As he celebrated his small victory, a tail sprouted from his back, rushing out the window after the monster. It reached the dead body on the street, and like a living creature devoured the monster's core. Yu-han grabbed the tail, watching as it munched on its prize. He was familiar with this ability, the tail of gluttony. It was a powerful skill from his previous life, but he had no idea why he still possessed it after being reborn. The great catastrophe was set to happen in 4 years. In his past life, he had acquired this ability by absorbing the core of a monster that also had this power. It was also known that the younger a person was when they activated their power, the stronger it would become. To test this, he transformed his hand into a sharp blade and struck his crib, bending the metal instantly. In his past life, he had awakened as an S-ranker at the age of 7. Since he now had this power as an infant, he was certain he would become a legendary triple S rank this time. This was his ticket to riches, fame, and beautiful women. With this thought, he decided he didn't need to stick around and play the role of a clueless baby. As he began to crawl away to start his new life, the bent part of the crib he had damaged started to crack, aiming to fall right on top of him. Yuhan tried to move, but his infant body gave out, leaving him paralyzed on the floor. The metal crib gave way and began to topple. The last thing he saw as his eyes closed was his mother desperately rushing to his side as the crib fell. He remembered his past life and the ruthless master who had put him through horrible trials. The man had forced him to do disgusting things like eating dog food just to survive. These acts were meant to prove that he was nothing more than the organization's dog. Yuhan gritted his teeth, the memory still making him angry. He woke up slowly as sunlight streamed onto his face. It seemed he had blacked out after defeating the monster. Pushing himself up, he saw his mother sitting nearby, writing in a book. It looked like she had managed to save him after all. But now the question was, why had he passed out? It seemed the power of his ability was too much for his infant body to handle. He had only used it for 30 seconds. Yet it had completely drained him, leaving him defenseless. For now, he needed to get stronger to properly wield his own power. As he was thinking, he heard the sound of his mother crying softly. He glanced at the book she was writing in its pages covered with sticky notes. On the current page, she wrote about how she had almost lost her treasure. He realized she was talking about him. He also noticed a nasty bruise on her back, likely from when she shielded him. His mother from his past life would have happily sold him to the organization for a quick profit. And yet this woman had risked her own life to protect him. He reached out one of his tiny hands to comfort her, and as soon as she felt his touch, she pulled him into a tight hug. It seemed this woman was different, and that made him decide to stay with her for a while. Regardless, there wasn't much time. The world would change in less than a week. The next monster was probably already on its way, and he needed to be able to fight for more than 30 seconds if he wanted to protect his new home. Outside their apartment, a window cleaner shivered in pain as blue slime seeped out of his eyes, mouth, and nose. The slime slid down the building and entered the drain pipes below, making its way to a specific destination. As Yuhan considered his next steps, his mother brought something over to him covered by a red blanket. She removed the blanket to reveal a dog inside a cage. She explained that she got the dog from a neighbor so he could have a companion. Yuhan recognized the dog from his past life. It had been a fierce mutt, and he never thought he would see it again. On top of that, the dog was far too big to be a baby's playmate. However, this might turn out to be a good thing for Yuhan. His mother might be a bit clumsy, but it seemed she could be useful sometimes. If he trained the dog right, it could become a strong ally, perhaps even a means of transportation. Having a big dog might not be so bad after all. His mother smiled at the little grin on his face. It seemed she had made the right decision. She left the two of them to play while she went to do chores. Yuhan stared the dog down, wondering what to do with it. First, he needed to feed it. He got a sausage from the kitchen and ordered the dog to eat. If it ate, Yuhan would become its master, and the training could begin. Despite the baby's attempt at forming a contract, the dog was too simple-minded to understand. As it bent down to pick up the sausage, Yuhan stomped on its head trying to establish dominance. However, while the dog didn't understand words, it certainly wouldn't tolerate disrespect. It swatted Yuhan with two well-placed paws to the face, sending the baby flying. Then it turned away to enjoy its sausage in peace. But Yuhan wasn't going to take that lying down. With a loud battle cry, he leaped up and pounced on the dog. The two of them began to wrestle while his mother, hearing their antics from the other room, laughed, thinking they had already become friends. As she was cooking, she realized she was out of flour. When she bent down to look for more, a blue slime monster emerged from the sink drain, towering over the fighting dog and baby. It aimed directly for the oblivious woman who was still rummaging in the cupboard. The slime monster launched itself through the air, heading straight for Yuhan's mother. The dog sprang into action, pushing her fully into the sink cupboard just before the slime could hit her. Thankfully, his mother was unaware of the danger. While the slime and the dog fought behind her, Yu-Han watched with an unimpressed look. The monster was too weak to cause any real problems, but it would still be troublesome. Its liquid body rendered slashing and stabbing attacks useless. His mother, more concerned about the bump on her head than the intense battle behind her, tried to get out of the cupboard. The slime eventually began to envelop the dog, its form starting to morph. Yu-Han had to act fast. He remembered from past battles that slime monsters were weak to dryness. He immediately spotted his bottle of powdered milk, opened it, and tossed it at the monster. The powder coated the slime, which recoiled and shrank, bouncing around the room in a panic as it lost moisture. Once it stopped moving, Yu-Han trapped it under a dustbin. With the threat seemingly neutralized, both the dog and his mother peeked their heads out from behind the kitchen counter. His mother then accidentally spilled flour all over herself and the dog, leaving them even more disoriented. She rushed off to wash up before the flour could stain her clothes. Meanwhile, Yu-Han savored the thrill of catching a monster. Slime could be used as a natural monster repellent. If he spread its liquid on the windows, it could deter future attacks. Suddenly, the dustbin shifted. The slime leaped out, taking advantage of the silence to escape. The dog blocked its path, and Yu-Han rushed to trap it again, but it slipped away narrowly, avoiding the dustbin. Before disappearing out the window, it raised a slimy middle finger at them. The slime had invaded their home, caused chaos, and now had the audacity to leave so disrespectfully. It may have been weak, but its cockiness was too much for them to bear. Yu-Han grabbed a nearby umbrella as a weapon and climbed onto the dog's back. It was time to chase the monster down. They couldn't let it escape and cause more trouble. They reached the ground floor just in time to see the slime perched on a nearby building. It dripped its liquid onto the head of a passing girl. She looked up just as the slime leaped down, attempting to swallow her whole. Yu-Han and the dog rushed to the rescue. Yu-Han knew that if he used his own strength, he wouldn't last long against the slime. But if they let the monster feed on the girl, the street would become a sea of blood, a sight he had seen far too many times in his past life. The dog was just fast enough to reach the girl in time, leaping over her as Yu-Han opened the umbrella, blocking the rain of slime before it could hit her. The slime was not deterred and jumped off the umbrella, this time aiming to attack the dog and baby directly. Since Yu-Han could only use his powers for a short time, he had one shot to end the monster. He fired an enhanced punch, blowing through the monster and destroying it instantly. The slime exploded, raining down on the area, completely defeated. Yu-Han and the dog stood victorious. Thankfully, he was in time to save the girl before she became slime food. But she had also seen him use his powers, and she looked terrified. Without wasting a second, the girl took off, sprinting down the road without looking back. It was understandable, considering the scene she had just witnessed. A more difficult thought was how he was going to clean up this mess. His tail emerged from his diaper and began to absorb the slime scattered around the street. It seemed the tail now had the power to absorb another monster's ability. In his past life, the only way for Kang Han-soo to gain a new ability was to switch it out with a previous one. But now the tail was quickly consuming all the scattered slime, turning the power into his own. He tested it by forming a slime ball in his hand. It seemed the two powers were coexisting. In his past life, Kang Han-soo had tried to switch abilities as little as possible to avoid being caught by the organization. That cautiousness had ultimately led to his downfall. But that didn't change how strange it was that the tail of gluttony had somehow evolved on its own. It was most likely because of his age. The younger a person was when they developed abilities, the stronger the power became, and the faster they could adapt. Kang Han-soo had become an eligible user at the age of 10, but everyone younger than him had died. Most children couldn't survive the monster toxins and perished as soon as they were exposed. But now Yu-Han was even younger than any of the potential candidates from his past, meaning his growth potential was incalculable. While he was lost in thought, the dog brought him back home safely. He jumped off the back of his trusty steed and used his new slime powers to coat the window's vents and drainage pipes, ensuring no monsters would be coming to his home anymore. But just doing that had already drained him of all energy. There was no use thinking about new abilities when his stamina was too low to do anything with them. However, he didn't need to worry too much about the immediate future. The slime barrier should keep them safe. Yuhan collapsed to the floor in exhaustion. The dog approached him with a menacing look in its eyes. It seemed it was finally time for revenge for the earlier humiliation. The dog leaned down and picked Yuhan up by the scruff of his shirt. For a moment, the baby thought he was about to become dog food. Back in the apartment, his mother came out of the shower fully cleaned of the flour. She went to the living room and saw him snuggled up with the dog on the floor. It may have looked like they were snuggling, but Yuhan was struggling fiercely against the dog's weight. Hours passed. The baby finally freed himself from his fluffy prison and got back to work protecting the apartment. He managed to coat every opening with the special slime. Now, even if a major disaster hit their home, would be safe for a while. While working, he figured out the current state of his tail. It could now stock up to 4 abilities at once, unlike in his past life. He could use both the tail of gluttony and his slime powers, but only for about 30 seconds each. To prepare for the coming disaster, he needed supplies. The biggest cause of death after the catastrophe wasn't monsters. It was the starvation caused by disrupted logistics, which led to a desperate scramble for resources. If someone could stockpile supplies early, they could not only avoid conflict but also gather followers. Yuhan needed to prepare as soon as possible, but as a baby, his options were limited. Supermarkets would soon be crowded and crawling with monsters. If even one person got infected, the disease would spread rapidly. With his current body, he couldn't handle a large horde alone. As he mulled over his options, his mother's phone rang on the living room table. He crawled over to see messages coming in from the landlord's group chat. Luckily, her phone wasn't locked. The people in the chat were discussing a weird virus that was turning people into monsters. It was clear they didn't grasp the severity of the coming apocalypse. Yuhan was more than happy to enlighten them. He sneakily created an account and joined the chat warning people that a great disaster was coming and they needed to gather supplies before chaos erupted. Despite his carefully guided instructions, no one believed him. The fact that he was using a brand new anonymous account didn't help. As a baby, online forums weren't much help either. At this rate, everyone would die before the organization even formed. Suddenly, a friend request popped up on the phone. He accepted out of curiosity. The person on the other end cut to the chase. They wanted to make a deal if he was really looking for supplies. The person's username was Gia. The name sounded familiar. It was the same name as a woman who had worked for the organization. His guess was spot on. On the other side of the screen, Gia relaxed in a chair surrounded by computers and gadgets as she texted him. Things were about to get very interesting. It was clear that whoever she was talking to was a very cautious person. Before making any deal, they wanted to hear her plan. She found the back and forth troublesome, so she decided to be direct. She offered to provide all the supplies he wanted, food, water, armor, whatever he needed. The only thing she would charge for was information at a price of 100 million yen. However, Gia also had a problem transportation, so she made a counter-proposal. She would give him the information he needed for free if he gave her 20% of the supplies he collected. Both her tone and the 100 million yen starting price sounded more fitting for a grade schooler. Logically, there was no way this person wasn't the Gia he remembered from the organization. He continued to test her, asking directly why he should trust anything she said. Furthermore, he asked why he should even agree to her terms in the first place. Gia asks him if he is hoping to become an enemy instead of an ally. She would prefer that they get along instead of bickering or distrusting each other. The baby agrees and asks for the location to pick up the supplies. She tells him she left the information in a mailbox on the ground floor of his apartment building. The organization hadn't formed yet, which meant that Gia wasn't an executive. Despite that, she was still a dangerous woman who used information to toy with people for her own gain. Once she set her eyes on a target, she would use every trick she knew to exploit them. There was no way she genuinely wanted to get along with someone she just met. She was trying to lure him into a trap, using information as bait. This time, however, Yuhan was wise to her tricks. He would be the one stirring things up, not her. He rested first, sleeping for 2 hours. By the time he woke up, his stamina was completely recovered. The elevator had security cameras, and he didn't want to reveal his identity so easily, so he turned his attention to the stairs. But there was one problem: he was still a baby, and the stairs were too difficult for his tiny body to climb. In that case, he had to rely on his fluffy companion. He turned to the dog sleeping on the couch, knowing the mutt was his only hope. Yuhan tried to wake the dog by grabbing its tail, but the dog was not amused. It slapped Yuhan away with its tail, sending the little kid flying. Yuhan thought he had tamed the beast, but it seemed they were still not on good terms. Then he spotted a box of treats on the kitchen counter. He poured some into his hand and held them up to the dog's nose. In seconds, the dog was up and ready to cooperate. Despite its tough exterior, the mutt was actually rather easy to please. With his transportation secured, he rode the dog through the apartment building and eventually reached the mailboxes. Inside one, a pink letter was sticking out. That was obviously his target, but there was also a camera watching the area. It was clear Jia wanted to use the camera to confirm his identity. If that happened, his information would be sold immediately and he would lose his upper hand. Jia didn't mess with people she didn't know, so Yuhan had to keep his anonymity. He just had to throw her off. The baby activated his powers, stretching slim red tendrils around the room and scanning for anything suspicious. Besides the apartment's security camera, he found 3 other hidden cameras, most likely installed by her. She desperately wanted to expose his identity. In her computer room, Jia laughed eagerly, waiting to see what kind of sucker would fall for her trap. However, without anyone getting close to the mailbox, she received a confirmation that the person she was speaking to had already collected the information. She desperately looked through the camera footage, but the only thing she saw was a dog idly standing beside the mailbox. Little did she know that behind the dog was her target. He had figured out the camera's blind spot and used his furry companion to hide while he subtly read the letter. He grabbed the flyer from the mailbox and rushed away unseen. The flyer pointed him to a clearance sale at a nearby supermarket. As he read it, Jia blew up his phone demanding to know who he was. He taunted her back, telling her he would reveal his identity for 100 million yen. This angered Jia even more. She activated a spider surveillance system hidden in a drain and ordered it to scan the entire building. The spider-looking device was equipped with a camera and was dust-proof, waterproof, and resistant to temperature magnets, high speeds, and electric shock. The spider made its way towards Yuhan and the dog, but was immediately stomped on by a pair of fluffy slippers coming down the stairs. Jia cried out in pain as her $30 million robot was destroyed in seconds. The person responsible was his own mother, who had come looking for them. Jia cried over the loss of her device, but luckily the audio function still worked. She could hear a female voice. Then she realized the call function also worked, which meant they should be able to hear her. She grabbed the mic and tried to threaten whoever was on the other end, warning them that they hadn't won. "Now that I have your voice," she taunted, "I can expose all your messages and your dark past all over the internet." But the person on the other end didn't respond. Instead, they continued talking to someone else, commenting on how they were wearing light clothes and could get a cold. That's when Jia realized they couldn't hear her. She had been talking to herself. On top of that, even with her vast network, she couldn't find out who the person was. They were completely hidden. Meanwhile, Yuhan got a free ride back to the apartment from his mother, who scolded him for running out on his own. The crushed mechanical spider lay on the floor, only 4% functional. Jia eventually reached out to Yuhan again, offering to give him the information and supplies for free. It seemed she had given up, which was almost disappointing. When they returned to the apartment, Yuhan was surprisingly let off the hook. His mother thought the dog had opened the door and the baby had crawled out while half asleep. Because of that, he wouldn't be able to use the dog for a while. It was tied up to avoid any more escapes. According to Jia, a warehouse-style supermarket would open soon. She was going to give them supplies from an inventory she had stolen. For her to do that so willingly was rather generous. He needed to gather materials sooner rather than later, but first he had to figure out how to get there. He left the flyer on the table for his mother to see, but she hadn't noticed it. He couldn't just tell her about the end of the world. As he was trying to figure out what to do, he overheard her say there were only 5 days' worth of milk left. That was the perfect opportunity. He pushed over the cup of milk on the table and pretended to be asleep. When she came to clean up the mess, she finally noticed the flyer. She picked it up and started to consider checking it out. Everything was going according to Yuhan's plan. The day finally came for the trip to the warehouse. She dressed the baby in pink clothes, much to his disappointment. The dog was left at home with plenty of food. When they reached the supermarket, a security guard rushed over telling them there was an infectious disease going around and people were supposed to stay home. His mother tried to explain that she just needed powdered milk, but the guard, a government worker, wasn't having it. Yuhan knew the government would soon disappear, so they didn't have to worry for long. As the guard was talking, he didn't notice the monster stalking up behind him until it put its hand on the man's head. In an instant, the monster squeezed and the man's head popped like a bloody balloon. Then it set its sights on the defenseless mother and child. This monster was much larger than anything Yuhan had faced so far. It was a strong, proliferative type with no particular weak points. He didn't want to reveal his strength, but if he didn't use his power, both he and his mother would die here. There was no time to waste. He was about to spring into action, but his mother plucked him out of the stroller and tried to run for it. Yuhan knew running was useless. This thing was a whole different species, way faster than a human. As the monster closed in, Yuhan spotted a case of fire extinguishers on the wall. He used his powers to shatter the case, which exploded and covered the area in a cloud of gas. The sudden cover was enough for Yuhan to squeeze out of his mother's arms and attack the monster, sending it flying into a wall. He had about 30 seconds until the dust settled to take care of this thing before his mother noticed what was happening. She had passed out from the sudden shock of the attack, so he had to finish everything before she woke up. The proliferative type monster had its core in its head. One clean strike there would kill it. However, the monster was still unharmed from his earlier blow. Yuhan had to finish it in one shot before it could get back up. There were no shortcuts this time. He had to fight it head on. Thankfully, he could at least stand now and didn't have to crawl. The monster lunged, but Yuhan dodged. He then used his tail of gluttony ability, slicing at the monster with thin, sharp tendrils. He didn't manage to kill it, but he at least made it bleed. Things didn't look good, but Yuhan was sure he would win. He rushed to attack again. Thanks to his small body, he easily dodged most of its attacks using the strings from his ability to wrap around its body. Once he landed, he pulled the strings tight, cutting through it. He had the upper hand, but he still needed to strike its head. The monster's large size made it difficult to aim for a fast-moving baby. It couldn't use its full strength because of how quickly it was forced to move. It was like trying to chase a mouse. Yuhan was outsmarting it, wearing it down until it could barely move. This was all thanks to the experience he'd built up in his past life. Thanks to the baby's consistent attacks, the monster's power was greatly reduced. One more hit should be enough. He couldn't get too smug, though. The weakened monster used all its remaining strength to rip a spike from its back and chuck it at the baby. Yuhan dodged, but it still cut deeply into his forehead. He hopped away, putting distance between them. If it continued to attack like that, he had no chance of getting closer. He needed a new strategy, a surprise attack or a diversion. Time was running out, and he would soon feel the after effects of using his full power. He might have to grab his mother and run. As he was trying to figure out what to do, he noticed his mother now awake, helplessly looking around. His time had run out faster than he'd anticipated. As she searched for him, she came face to face with the monster and stared up at it in shock. Instead of running, she reached into her pocket. Yuhan desperately yelled for her to run, but as a protagonist's mother, she had some tricks of her own. From her pocket, she pulled out a stun gun and shot the monster, zapping it with intense electricity and causing it to freeze. It may have been unorthodox, but this was exactly the diversion the baby needed. Yuhan leaped off the building towards the street below. Right as the monster recovered, it swiped at his mother, sending her flying backward. As she fell to the floor, conveniently looking away, Yuhan descended from the sky with a massive attack intent on taking out the trash once and for all. The monster looked up just in time to see a baby with a massive buildup of energy on its leg coming down at high speed. The attack connected right on the monster's head, shattering it and killing it instantly. His mother was still on the floor, unconscious. The baby walked up to check on her. As much as he wasn't too fond of her yet, it would have been more dangerous if she hadn't been there. Not only did she try to save him, but she also risked her life to do so. She still had a lot of training to go, but it seemed he could at least trust her. As he thought that, the after effects of his power came crashing in, and he collapsed beside her, losing consciousness. When he woke up again, he had a bandage on his head, and a strange red-eyed man was fixing a new diaper for him. Yuhan didn't recognize the stranger and immediately peed on the man to try and scare him away. His mother quickly rushed to apologize. The man wiped the pee off his face, accepting that he had probably just scared the kid. He then asked her if she was getting along with the dog. It seemed his mother knew the man. He was likely the dog's former owner. Yuhan was more concerned that his mother was acting as if nothing had happened, even though she'd seen the monster. Then he noticed his hair was wet. She was probably crying in secret again while he was asleep. The man told her they were heading out to stock up on supplies and invited her to come along. That caught Yuhan's attention. Stocking up on supplies with the help of others wasn't a bad idea. Before he followed, he had to retrieve the crystal core from the monster he'd defeated. He jumped out of his stroller and hurried to the remains. Once his tail absorbed it, he immediately gained the monster's power, a hardening skill. It wasn't a bad skill. He could now use his tail as a shield. Before he crawled back, he noticed the strange man on his phone. He was talking with someone about how he and his mother were a burden. He revealed that the reason he was bringing them along was so they could be used as decoys in an emergency. The guy was clearly crazy. He told the person on the other end to take another vehicle and grab more supplies. As Yuhan listened, he accidentally bumped the truck he was hiding behind. The man quickly turned around, ready to attack anyone eavesdropping. He came up to him, but expecting to see a threat, saw only a little baby and let his guard down. The man patted Yuhan on the head and asked how he got there. Then he got back on the phone and told the person that the baby had heard their conversation, but it didn't matter since killing him wouldn't be a problem. Yuhan bowed his head anxiously, realizing the guy was completely insane. They all packed into a car, and his mother secured him in a child's safety seat. Then they prepared to set off with the man and 3 other people. Yuhan didn't trust the crazy man to be the driver, but there was nothing he could do. If he could use his power, he would crush the man in an instant. The others in the car got acquainted, and his mother offered some snacks. It was incredibly strange how calm these people were. Yuhan wondered if they had even seen footage of the monsters. The man started the car and waved to the person at the compound they were staying at. As they left, Yuhan realized their lack of awareness was probably a kind of self-defense. After all, even if people saw monsters or corpses, it didn't always mean the world was ending. All they could do was act normal and try to hide their fear. As they continued to drive, Miss Ling brought out a box of sandwiches to share. The people in the car were all residents from their apartment building. There was his mother, Ling Yumi, a resident of room 502. Then there was Den, a resident of room 103, and finally Ryu, a resident of room 104. His mother continued to offer snacks. As they drove, Ryu asked his mother how she was managing to raise a child on her own. After all, she was young and beautiful and didn't seem to be working. It was also dangerous to go outside with a child. His mother had considered leaving him at home, but she noticed that whenever Yuhan was left alone, he started to act crazy. She had to bring him along. Yuhan subconsciously tried to tell his mother to stop talking as she sighed, thinking of all the chaos her child had caused. One of the men in the front was Cheon Myung-oh of room 504. The driver commented that Ling was useful in a fight, especially since she had managed to take down a large monster with her taser. They also brought the dog in the truck, following them for extra attack power. Yuhan's mother didn't remember what had happened and didn't realize it was her child who did all the work. As they continued, the driver realized something was wrong. There should be more monsters around, but the place was surprisingly empty. Suddenly, he noticed someone running on the road, clearly looking for help. As she was running, the wall of a nearby building burst open and a hand reached out for her. Then, she was suddenly overrun by several monsters. The driver yelled for them to hold on tight as he tried to avoid a collision. The car and the truck both drifted to avoid the small crowd of monsters, and they managed to move by safely. The dog barked loudly in the back as the monsters piled on top of the girl, pulling her to the ground. She cried for help as they attacked her. Today had been hectic. Yuhan took a moment to analyze the situation. The bug-headed monsters surrounding the car all had sting marks on their necks. The handler must be some type of cyborg. The parasite handlers were parasitic-type monsters that could turn humans into cyborgs. Individually, they weren't much, but in large numbers it was a different story. As long as the handler was around the cyborg, monsters would just keep multiplying. They needed to escape immediately. The rest of the bug monsters started coming towards the car. They were way too close for the driver's liking, and in seconds one of the monsters managed to break through the windshield. Yuhan knew it was possible for them all to survive, but he needed to drive them off quickly. Unfortunately, he could only use his powers for 30 seconds, and if he wasted all of it here, it would be over. He looked around the car, wondering if any of the passengers could fight. Ryu desperately looked out at the girl being devoured. She cried for them to stop wasting time and save her. That immediately pissed off Yuhan. She was going to be a burden. Cheon Myung-oh told them they shouldn't go and save her. She already had the same wound as the other monsters on her neck, meaning she was most likely a lost cause. Cheon Myung-oh clearly had sharp eyes, but he was probably too old to be of any use in a battle, though he might be strong enough to carry supplies. The driver asked if they should charge in, but if they were going to, they should deal with the monsters first. Yuhan didn't like that idea. It seemed like he was trying to get them all killed. Den, who was driving the truck behind them, picked up a hard object and announced that he would go and help. He looked like a wimp, but was trying to act brave. It was clear he wasn't reliable. It looked like there really wasn't anyone who could take down the monsters. His mother reached into her bag for her stun gun. Once Den heard she was going outside, he decided he didn't need to go anymore. As they were all talking, a sharp object suddenly stabbed into the car, going straight through Den's chest. He was tossed out of the car like a rag doll. Then sharp claws dug into the side of the car, and a different insect monster peered its terrifying head inside, immediately stabbing Ryu and killing her. This must be the main body of all the cyborgs waiting for the right time to pounce. Since no one in the car was reliable, the baby was going to have to step up. Before he could, though a sharp stinger headed straight towards his mother. He wasn't fast enough to stop it, but instead of stabbing her, it unexpectedly stabbed the car cushion. They looked to the front to see Cheon Myung-oh unexpectedly holding the monster back. Cheon Myung-oh realized this must be the boss. The monster turned and tried to stab him, but he grabbed the stinger and broke it. It was clear this man was something else entirely. The monster screamed as he stabbed its own stinger into its neck. As its screams faded, it died, and Cheon Myung-oh dropped its dead body to the street. As he wiped the blood off his face, he complained about how old he was getting. Yuhan looked on in adoration, realizing the old man was a total powerhouse. But then he realized the fight wasn't over yet. The monster on the ground had a second phase. Just as he expected, it started to rise again. He didn't have a voice to talk, so he only had one way to warn the old man. He cried out as loud as he could, causing the old man to look behind him and narrowly dodge a sneak attack. The old man had seen this before when he was in the Special Combat Division. He immediately realized the monster wouldn't die by stabbing its heart. That explained why he was so strong. The man jumped out of the car to attack the monster. It looked like it wouldn't die easily. So Cheon Myung-oh decided to use all his energy to crush it once and for all. He grabbed the monster by its head and slammed his knee into its face, cracking the skull immediately. It was obvious he had refined battle knowledge. Yuhan should have realized sooner that the old man was from the military. In his past life, even though the military had been wiped out by the time he started going on missions, he'd heard rumors that after the government collapsed, the military became the largest force resisting the monsters. They were the enemies of the organization. Among them was the Special Combat Division, which underwent special training and was a thorn in the organization's side. Thanks to the man's efforts, they could finally go to the supermarket. His mother suggested they head home, but Cheon Myung-oh immediately shut that down, telling her that if they went home, something else might happen. They needed to keep moving forward. It looked like they finally had a reliable person on their team, but now Yuhan had to figure out how to get this guy on his side. Maybe he could send a fake military command blackmail Jia for insider info, or just cling to the old man and force him to protect them. The thought of using the man for his own personal gain made the baby grin evilly. As he was thinking, the man patted him on the head. Then he told Yuhan's mother to stay close to him with the baby so he could protect them. She immediately agreed, promising not to be a burden. He told her not to expect too much. He just wanted to help. She thanked the man for his help with the boss monster, but he told her not to mention it. After all, if Yu-Han hadn't cried, he would have definitely died. Then he told the little baby, "The more foolish someone is, the more they desire profit." It almost sounded like he could read the child's mind. Yu-Han crossed his arms and decided to peacefully accept the help, but he knew that Cheon Myung-o's personality would end up being his downfall. They finally reached the supermarket, but the gate was closed. The ad said it would be open, but the place was clearly closed. Jia, being a master hacker, had probably shut it remotely. Suddenly, the door opened. The driver explained that he had a friend remotely open it. As he said that, he smiled and flashed his phone. That made Yu-Han suspicious. He sneakily pulled his mother's phone out of her bag and saw a message from Jia informing him that she saw their car on the security camera and opened the gate. That confirmed the driver definitely knew Jia. That made things a lot more complicated. They entered the supermarket, and Yu-Han was tired now that they had finally reached their destination. The supermarket was huge with a lot of supplies. There were also no cameras, so he didn't have to worry about being spotted using his powers. Then he noticed the old man had brought a weapon rack. That was to be expected of a former Special Combat Division soldier. But now the man who had been guiding them had suddenly disappeared. There also didn't seem to be any staff. As they were trying to figure out what to do, they heard clapping. They looked forward and saw the man from earlier smiling cheekily. Then he declared that everything in the store had already been purchased by his organization. The moment Yu-Han dreaded the most had finally come true. The person standing in front of him was a member of the organization. Even Yu-Han's dog didn't like him as it started barking furiously. The driver finally showed his true colors, confessing that he had only used them to gain access to the supermarket. Now that he was done with them, it was time to dispose of them. During his boastful monologue, Yu-Han spotted a tattoo on the man's arm, a clear sign he belonged to the organization. With darkness in his eyes, the man declared that the supermarket now belonged to the East Sea Group, his voice filled with menace. His threat was especially aimed at the old military man. As he pulled a weapon from his pocket, he warned them not to move. The name of the society instantly caught Yu-Han's attention. This branch of the organization was anything but ordinary. They were a group of forerunners responsible for enforcing the Hunting Project. This group had already been spreading their crimes even before the calamity began. That must be why they were gathering supplies. Now Yu-Han understood why he had a bad feeling about this man. Meanwhile, Ling Yumi and the old man quickly grasped the gravity of the situation and noticed the lackeys surrounding them. But the old man was prepared. He immediately scooped up a shovel and hurled it at the generator. It struck with force, embedding into the machinery. The driver, however, remained standing calmly. In the next moment, the man smirked and pulled out a remote. The old man realized the situation was slipping out of his control. He leaped to tackle the driver, but was thrown back by a stack of cartons. The next moment, he found himself staring down the barrel of a gun. With a chuckle, the organization member remarked that he wouldn't let a military veteran slip away so easily. Unexpectedly, Ling Yumi stepped in, stun gun in hand, and warned the man to back away. She demanded to know his motives. The man, clearly entertained, realized just how spectacularly clueless she was. He even asked if she'd still think he was innocent after he shot her. Ling Yumi, still living in her cheerful bubble, offered to share the supplies like she was hosting a picnic. He actually laughed at her naivety. He then reminded her of the time he left the dog with her, not out of kindness, but because when he went to collect the money, the owner was already dead. So he figured he might as well get rid of the dog too. That's when she showed up, and he thought it would be entertaining to see how she'd juggle a full-grown dog and a baby. Shockingly, things had worked out back then. But now, with his gun ready, he rejected the idea of sharing. The next moment, all his lackeys pointed their weapons at them. The boss declared that weaklings like Ling Yumi should die. This moment triggered a memory in Yu-Han, when he was under the control of the organization, left with no choice but to eat rats just to sate his hunger. Back then, he was looked down upon just like this. He snapped out of his reverie when his dog got ready to attack. Yu-Han immediately threw a slime at the generator, causing a blackout. The boss shouted for everyone to stop shooting. Seizing the opportunity, Yu-Han activated his power and was about to punch him when the old man suddenly intervened, kicking the boss instead. Both Yu-Han and the old man looked at each other in astonishment. Yu Han understood that it was his bad luck to be seen by the old man who was part of the military. Eventually, they might consider him a monster and turn him into a research subject. As expected, the old man was thinking along the same lines. Just as he prepared to attack the baby, Yu Han leaped onto an upper rack right in the old man's blind spot. The old man switched on his flashlight. Yu Han had also planned to turn on the light, but was wary of the old man. He scoffed, realizing he had no choice now but to take the old man down first. However, his plan was interrupted by a sudden noise. People looked up and spotted a slime that distracted the entire group. With a smug smile, Yu Han took his usual seat in a trolley and prepared to enjoy the show. To his astonishment, the slime transformed into a doppelganger of the old man. It attacked him, and soon everyone was fighting their own clones. The old man, too, braced for battle against his double, cursing under his breath. Ling Yumi was terrified to see her perfect clone standing right in front of her. Her voice drew the old man's attention. He glanced back and saw Yu Han crying nearby while his clone tried to climb into the trolley. The old man assumed he must have seen this clone before. Yu Han's plan was working perfectly. He was now shedding crocodile tears, waiting for the old man to swoop in. As expected, the old man immediately attacked the clone when it tried to reach Yu Han. However, he grew frustrated when the clone reformed itself effortlessly. Realizing brute force alone wouldn't work, he hurled his shovel aside. He opened his armory box and pulled out his gun. Meanwhile, Ling Yumi managed to defeat her clone using her electric gun. Yu Han also defeated his clone through a relentless barrage of attacks. In the end, the old man destroyed his clone using raw firepower. But the battle wasn't over. Another slime clone launched itself at Ling Yumi only for the old man to shoot it at the last moment. The creature was still alive, trying to reform, but the old man continued to fire, determined to finish it off. At the same time, the boss got back on his feet, ready to attack just as the old man remained occupied. Yu Han cursed under his breath, frustrated by the situation. He couldn't use his powers openly without exposing his secret. As if in response, the old man Cheon Myung-oh appears behind Hoyul and is about to attack, but Hoyul dodges at the last moment. Hoyul prepares to counterattack, but Yu Han calls out his name to distract him. The sudden interruption startles Hoyul. Grinning, Hoyul asks Yu Han if he wants to know about his future. While he is momentarily distracted, the old man shoots him. Suddenly, a vision penetrates Hoyul's mind as he sees himself dealing with weaklings, people who are beneath him. Yu Han is showing Hoyul a future where he is always the loser, always useless. In the end, Yu Han tells him that this is his fate. Furious, Hoyul grabs his head and denies the claim. Another vision flashes he's bowing before others in a pathetic stance. He refuses to accept this future. Enraged, he lashes out wildly but ends up injuring himself. The next moment, they all stare in disbelief as Hoyul cuts off his own head. Watching the scene unfold, Yu Han grins. He has finally fooled the greatest con man of all. As Hoyul's head flies from his body, he once again glimpses Yu Han's memories. His eyes widen in fear as he sees the monster standing before him. The next moment, his severed head hits the ground, and he screams for Yu Han to get out of his mind. He yells at Yu Han, declaring that this is what the warning about the baby truly meant. The old man glances at Yu Han, his attention piqued. Hoyul continues, his voice strained, that Yu Han is the egg of calamity, startling both Yu Han and the old man. Hoyul warns that by starting this revolution, Yu Han has forfeited any chance at a normal life. From now on, the organization will hunt him relentlessly. Before he can reveal more, another gunshot rings out, and Hoyul is silenced. Yu Han and the old man turn quickly toward the source. A new figure steps out from his jeep, calmly explaining that if one doesn't kill their enemy in time, they will become their own enemy. The moment Yu Han realizes the man is from the military, he goes on high alert. The newcomer calls the old man teacher, crediting him for the very lesson he just spoke. His name is Captain Lee Hoyon, but he is more famously known as the Snow Wolf. Before the student and teacher can exchange greetings, another monster comes up behind Hoyon. Without flinching, he kills it. Yu Han, who is watching from behind a box, is astonished. At that moment, the old man asks if Hoyon is there on purpose because he intends to go home and look after his grandchild. Taking out his phone, Hoyon pleads with his teacher to return to headquarters as they are in a state of emergency. He then shows him a picture of his granddaughter who is safe and sound. He reminds him that the military needs their commander. Listening to this, Yuhan immediately realizes that this old man is none other than the top commander of the military. Hoyon asks the old man if he wants to confirm his granddaughter's safety. The old man agrees to go with him. Meanwhile, Yuhan is scared and unsure of what to do. When he moves, it draws their attention. A moment later, Hoyon is on him, gun pointed. Fortunately, Yuhan has already transformed back into his baby form. Hoyon suspiciously asks if he is the monster he saw a little while ago. Yuhan is scared to death, wondering if Hoyon is going to shoot him, but the old man steps in, informing his student that he is the one who placed Yuhan there. While scooping him into his arms, he whispers to Yuhan to keep pretending. With that, Yuhan starts crying like a baby. Hoyon comments on how well he gets along with the baby. Suddenly, Yuhan senses a strange aura coming from Hoyon and looks at him closely. He wonders if he has seen him before in the organization. Later, Yuhan is placed in the nursery with other babies. When the nurse places him in the crib, Hoyon tells her to go back, and she complies without question, while pretending to sleep. Yuhan listens and wonders about the whereabouts of the old man. He also wonders about the place he's in. Suddenly, a baby starts to cry, drawing Hoyon's attention. At first, he smoothly comments on the baby's energy and asks him to be quiet, but then his tone shifts as he uses his skill to make the baby fall asleep. Yuhan witnesses this, eyes wide in horror. He remembers that Hoyon is quite an important figure in the organization with the codename Tank. Not only that, he possesses a very rare and formidable ability. He can exploit and explode the blood in anyone's body at will. He knows Hoyon has used his skill on the baby, causing oxygen deprivation, making the baby unconscious rather than fall asleep naturally. He is someone Yuhan knows he must be cautious of. Now Hoyon is moving toward Yuhan. Yuhan thinks about his own abilities, which he has awakened too early, considering the organization has only just started. He wonders if he is already one of the compatible few to awaken his powers before the end times. At that moment, Hoyon decides to inspect Yuhan and tells him to be quiet. Yuhan holds his breath. As soon as Hoyon moves away, Yuhan lets out a sigh of relief. Before leaving, Hoyon comments on how fun it is. As he leaves, Yuhan glances around to make sure he's really gone, then immediately jumps to his feet. He recalls Hoyul, a con artist who could manipulate minds. Yuhan has abilities like god-level absorption, which creates a barrier in his mind to protect his thoughts from him. Now, to protect himself against Hoyon, he tunes his blood flow, slows it down, and allows the fake blood to be automatically absorbed. After observing it, he looks around at the other kids and wonders if they are also the eggs of calamity. He's heard the term in his past life, but never had access to that kind of information. Still, he believes Hoyon must know something about it. He then analyzes the situation with the military, which was eliminated in his past life by the organization. His thoughts drift to the old man, who clearly doesn't trust Hoyon since he wanted to personally check on his grandchild. He also wonders about the inspection Hoyon performed on him. Then he remembers his mother and his dog, but quickly jerks those thoughts away. He's not in a situation where he can think about others. Right now, all he needs to focus on is his escape plan. He tries to open the door with his ability, but can't use it. He remembers the crystal core he obtained earlier, which he used to fuse the ability called Dark Shadow, but during the fusion process, he can't use many of his abilities. Currently, he can only use Dark Shadow and God Barrier. The latter helps him resist mental attacks, but Dark Shadow is too powerful and risky to use in his current situation. So he decides to wait and understand the intentions of those around him before risking exposure. So far, pretending to be just a baby has worked well. Suddenly, he notices something emerging from another crib. He looks down at another baby whose legs are turning into tree branches. So this baby must be another compatible one like him. Then he notices several other babies with different kinds of abilities. He remembers in his past life these babies were always locked away. Suddenly, a tree vine scoops him up. When he tries to break free, he can't. His thoughts are interrupted by another boy who helps him break free. It turns out to be a little boy who advises him to just pretend to sleep. Yuhan is taken aback to see that the boy is just 5 years old and has already mastered his abilities. Suddenly, he curses as he hears a sound. The boy immediately escapes. Yuhan turns to see nurses entering the room for inspection and quickly pretends to be asleep on the floor. The head nurse instructs everyone to gather every baby. One of them notices him lying there and scoops him up. After a while, the nurses place all the babies on the floor. He slightly opens his eyes and sees nothing but darkness. A chilling thought crosses his mind. Are they going to be made to fight to the death? It wouldn't be surprising, as this was a trend in the organization. He also senses the presence of someone from the organization nearby. Slowly, he begins to crawl as other babies also start getting up. When he looks up, he spots Hoyon on the upper floor. Before he can process anything else, he sees a monster moving toward a baby. At first, he guesses these babies are going to be prey. Then he notices that the monster is restrained by chains, but that doesn't mean they're safe. He guesses the restraints are only temporary. The boy from before steps ahead, scoops the crying baby from the monster's vicinity, and places him far away. Looking around, he now concludes that they've all been gathered here to fight the monster in order to forcefully awaken their abilities. The purpose of gathering these babies here must be the organization's hunting dog plan. At that moment, Hoyon reveals he was just pretending in front of his teacher. Then he politely asks everyone not to disappoint him and presses the button to start their test. With that, the restraints on the monster break and it rushes toward Yuhan, but he barely manages to dodge. In the process, his ear gets injured. He looks at the monster, which might be second grade. He's confident he can take it down, but he's not so sure about the others. One of the toddlers starts to cry, drawing the monster's attention. Now it's moving toward that baby, but the girl beside the toddler gets frightened, and with that, her tree branch ability activates. Several vines wrap around the monster. Yuhan gives the girl a thumbs up and hopes she can hold on. At that moment, Hoyon also notices her ability, which is identified as a vine type. He compliments it, saying that it's a good one, especially considering it's only at the first grade level. His attention then shifts to Yuhan, who hasn't shown any abilities yet. Still, he's convinced Yuhan must be an ability user. In his mind, he believes Yuhan will definitely activate his powers once pushed into extreme conditions. With that, the monster breaks free from the vines and prepares to unleash its full power. As if in response, the old man Cheon Myung-oh appears behind Hoyul and is about to attack, but Hoyul dodges at the last moment. Hoyul prepares to counterattack, but Yuhan calls out his name to distract him. The sudden interruption startles Hoyul. Grinning, Hoyul asks Yuhan if he wants to know about his future. While he is momentarily distracted, the old man shoots him. Suddenly, a vision penetrates Hoyul's mind as he sees himself dealing with weaklings, people who are beneath him. Yuhan is showing Hoyul a future where he is always the loser, always useless. In the end, Yuhan tells him that this is his fate. Furious, Hoyul grabs his head and denies the claim. Another vision flashes. He's bowing before others in a pathetic stance. He refuses to accept this future. Enraged, he lashes out wildly, but ends up injuring himself. The next moment, they all stare in disbelief as Hoyul cuts off his own head. Watching the scene unfold, Yuhan grins. He has finally fooled the greatest con man of all. As Hoyul's head flies from his body, he once again glimpses Yuhan's memories. His eyes widen in fear as he sees the monster standing before him. The next moment, his severed head hits the ground and he screams for Yuhan to get out of his mind. He yells at Yuhan, declaring that this is what the warning about the baby truly meant. The old man glances at Yuhan, his attention piqued. Hoyul continues, his voice strained, that Yuhan is the egg of calamity, startling both Yuhan and the old man. Hoyul warns that by starting this revolution, Yuhan has forfeited any chance at a normal life. From now on, the organization will hunt him relentlessly. Before he can reveal more, another gunshot rings out and Hoyul is silenced. Yuhan and the old man turn quickly toward the source. A new figure steps out from his jeep, calmly explaining that if one doesn't kill their enemy in time, they will become their own enemy. The moment Yuhan realizes the man is from the military, he goes on high alert. The newcomer calls the old man teacher, crediting him for the very lesson he just spoke. His name is Captain Lee Hoyon, but he is more famously known as the Snow Wolf. Before the student and teacher can exchange greetings, another monster comes up behind Hoyon. Without flinching, he kills it. Yu Han, who is watching from behind a box, is astonished. At that moment, the old man asks if Hoyon is there on purpose because he intends to go home and look after his grandchild. Taking out his phone, Hoyon pleads with his teacher to return to headquarters as they are in a state of emergency. He then shows him a picture of his granddaughter who is safe and sound. He reminds him that the military needs their commander. Listening to this, Yu Han immediately realizes that this old man is none other than the top commander of the military. Hoyon asks the old man if he wants to confirm his granddaughter's safety. The old man agrees to go with him. Meanwhile, Yu Han is scared and unsure of what to do. When he moves, it draws their attention. A moment later, Hoyon is on him, gun pointed. Fortunately, Yu Han has already transformed back into his baby form. Hoyon suspiciously asks if he is the monster he saw a little while ago. Yu Han is scared to death, wondering if Hoyon is going to shoot him, but the old man steps in, informing his student that he is the one who placed Yu Han there. While scooping him into his arms, he whispers to Yu Han to keep pretending. With that, Yu Han starts crying like a baby. Hoyon comments on how well he gets along with the baby. Suddenly, Yu Han senses a strange aura coming from Hoyon and looks at him closely. He wonders if he has seen him before in the organization. Later, Yu Han is placed in the nursery with other babies. When the nurse places him in the crib, Hoyon tells her to go back, and she complies without question, while pretending to sleep. Yu Han listens and wonders about the whereabouts of the old man. He also wonders about the place he's in. Suddenly, a baby starts to cry, drawing Hoyon's attention. At first, he smoothly comments on the baby's energy and asks him to be quiet, but then his tone shifts as he uses his skill to make the baby fall asleep. Yu Han witnesses this eyes wide in horror. He remembers that Hoyon is quite an important figure in the organization with the codename Tank. Not only that, he possesses a very rare and formidable ability. He can exploit and explode the blood in anyone's body at will. He knows Hoyon has used his skill on the baby, causing oxygen deprivation, making the baby unconscious rather than fall asleep naturally. He is someone Yu Han knows he must be cautious of. Now, Hoyon is moving toward Yu Han. Yu Han thinks about his own abilities, which he has awakened too early considering the organization has only just started. He wonders if he is already one of the compatible few to awaken his powers before the end times. At that moment, Hoyon decides to inspect Yu Han and tells him to be quiet. Yu Han holds his breath. As soon as Hoyon moves away, Yu Han lets out a sigh of relief. Before leaving, Hoyon comments on how fun it is. As he leaves, Yu Han glances around to make sure he's really gone, then immediately jumps to his feet. He recalls Hoyul, a con artist who could manipulate minds. Yu Han has abilities like God-level absorption, which creates a barrier in his mind to protect his thoughts from him. Now, to protect himself against Hoyon, he tunes his blood flow, slows it down, and allows the fake blood to be automatically absorbed. After observing it, he looks around at the other kids and wonders if they are also the eggs of calamity. He's heard the term in his past life, but never had access to that kind of information. Still, he believes Hoyon must know something about it. He then analyzes the situation with the military, which was eliminated in his past life by the organization. His thoughts drift to the old man who clearly doesn't trust Hoyon since he wanted to personally check on his grandchild. He also wonders about the inspection Hoyon performed on him. Then he remembers his mother and his dog, but quickly jerks those thoughts away. He's not in a situation where he can think about others. Right now, all he needs to focus on is his escape plan. He tries to open the door with his ability, but can't use it. He remembers the crystal core he obtained earlier, which he used to fuse the ability called Dark Shadow, but during the fusion process, he can't use many of his abilities. Currently, he can only use Dark Shadow and God Barrier. The latter helps him resist mental attacks, but Dark Shadow is too powerful and risky to use in his current situation. So he decides to wait and understand the intentions of those around him before risking exposure. So far, pretending to be just a baby has worked well. Suddenly, he notices something emerging from another crib. He looks down at another baby whose legs are turning into tree branches. So this baby must be another compatible one like him. Then he notices several other babies with different kinds of abilities. He remembers in his past life these babies were always locked away. Suddenly a tree vine scoops him up. When he tries to break free, he can't. His thoughts are interrupted by another boy who helps him break free. It turns out to be a little boy who advises him to just pretend to sleep. Yu-Han is taken aback to see that the boy is just 5 years old and has already mastered his abilities. Suddenly he curses as he hears a sound. The boy immediately escapes. Yu-Han turns to see nurses entering the room for inspection and quickly pretends to be asleep on the floor. The head nurse instructs everyone to gather every baby. One of them notices him lying there and scoops him up. After a while, the nurses place all the babies on the floor. He slightly opens his eyes and sees nothing but darkness. A chilling thought crosses his mind. Are they going to be made to fight to the death? It wouldn't be surprising, as this was a trend in the organization. He also senses the presence of someone from the organization nearby. Slowly he begins to crawl as other babies also start getting up. When he looks up, he spots Hoyon on the upper floor. Before he can process anything else, he sees a monster moving toward a baby. At first, he guesses these babies are going to be prey. Then he notices that the monster is restrained by chains, but that doesn't mean they're safe. He guesses the restraints are only temporary. The boy from before steps ahead, scoops the crying baby from the monster's vicinity, and places him far away. Looking around, he now concludes that they've all been gathered here to fight the monster in order to forcefully awaken their abilities. The purpose of gathering these babies here must be the organization's hunting dog plan. At that moment, Hoyon reveals he was just pretending in front of his teacher. Then he politely asks everyone not to disappoint him and presses the button to start their test. With that, the restraints on the monster break and it rushes toward Yu-Han, but he barely manages to dodge. In the process, his ear gets injured. He looks at the monster, which might be second grade. He's confident he can take it down, but he's not so sure about the others. One of the toddlers starts to cry, drawing the monster's attention. Now it's moving toward that baby, but the girl beside the toddler gets frightened, and with that, her tree branch ability activates. Several vines wrap around the monster. Yu-Han gives the girl a thumbs up and hopes she can hold on. At that moment, Hoyon also notices her ability, which is identified as a vine type. He compliments it, saying that it's a good one, especially considering it's only at the first grade level. His attention then shifts to Yu-Han, who hasn't shown any abilities yet. Still, he's convinced Yu-Han must be an ability user. In his mind, he believes Yu-Han will definitely activate his powers once pushed into extreme conditions. With that, the monster breaks free from the vines and prepares to unleash its full power.